Divorce attorneys of Reddit. What was the most stupid reason two people wanted to divorce? She saw a picture of him contra dancing he'd posted on Facebook. She knew he went contra dancing. That part wasn't the surprise. In fact, I'm still confused about this one. Maybe she just wanted a divorce but didn't have the guts to actually admit she wanted one. So she just blamed some stupid thing he did instead of actually assuming the guilt and fault of initiating a divorce. I'm not a divorce attorney, but my former subordinate got divorced over Pokemon cards. At one point during the separation, she came to work to accuse him of stealing some of her heirs. It got near physical and we had to have security forces remove the spouse so we could get back to work. They were a hot mess. Obligatory, not a lawyer. But a lawyer I know got a case because the husband didn't change his Facebook status to married quickly enough after the wedding. It was like 2 weeks. The judge laughed at the lady and made them get marriage counseling. Lawyer pocketed north of $1,000 for that. My ex's boyfriend. Never married. Mom told me that at his wedding to his now ex-wife he didn't introduce her immediately as his wife, so she flipped the hell out and started berating him in front of their guests. Marriage lasted less than 1 year. Don't get me wrong. He's an ashat. But yikes. Maybe not be hateful to the person you just pledged to spend your life with. Back in 1996, a woman filed for divorce. Seemingly out of nowhere. To end her marriage of 25 years. 2 years later, her ex-husband received a letter in the mail about her lump sum lottery winnings. Turns out that 11 days before filing for divorce she had won $1.3 million in the lottery. She didn't disclose this at all during the divorce proceedings in an effort to keep the winnings all to herself, as he would have received half under California law. When the ex-husband took this to court, the judge said she had violated state asset disclosure laws and gave all of her winnings to him. Her lawyer apparently said that if she had said something during the divorce, it's possible she might have been able to keep all of it or come to some agreement. But because of what she did, she lost it all. Here is a more detailed article about the whole thing. Kid got one elephant ride too many. Mom and dad agreed before dad took daughter to circus that one elephant ride should be plenty. Mom later finds out that dad let daughter have 2, not 1. As agreed. But 2 elephant rides. As mom would describe it, he's doubling down again. Trying to get her to hate me. I know it. Why the hell else is someone letting their kid ride an elephant halfway around the whole damn town? Everybody knows now. I knew a couple who married super early and divorced so he could join the Naval Academy. Apparently you can't enter if you're married. They stayed together and remarried after he graduated. This seems like one of the least stupid reasons for a divorce. Good on them for having such a strong and understanding relationship. And thank you for sharing such an interesting tale. I have a friend who used to be a security guard at a courthouse. He said one time he had to watch over a divorce proceeding between a 80-year-old man and his 40-year-old Vietnam wife. She said, in broken English, she wanted to divorce him because he couldn't satisfy her anymore. During the beginning of the case she would yell mean things about this guy and the judge had to constantly tell her to be quiet. The old man never said a word. Eventually the judge said, we will have to continue on a future date. She immediately said then forget it, got up and walked out of the courtroom. I know this isn't the reason for the divorce. Sorry. But it made me wonder what precipitated the divorce since it was so paranoid. My sister worked for a divorce attorney. And she had to field a couple of phone calls from a guy in the midst of a messy divorce. He insisted that his ex was putting rocks on his lawn to mess with the lawnmower. And he was trying to somehow add that to the divorce proceedings. Not an attorney. But my mom is a paralegal. There was one case that kept dragging along because they were fighting over the luggage. Once that was settled, they started arguing over a $25 plastic palm tree. That palm tree prompted the case to go into mediation, costing both of them around $1,000 each just for the mediation. Isn't that the point where both attorneys get together and buy each other's client a tiny plastic palm tree as a thank you? But then how would the poor lawyers be able to charge $1,000? My client and his wife were into a role-playing game. I think Second Life. Everyone had an avatar. I suspect that his and his wife's were much more sprightly than they were in real life. In a way, he suspected that she was being unfaithful to him in the game. So he created a fake avatar and stalked her in the game. Sure enough, she was running around on him, having virtual sex with another bloke, or bloke avatar anyway. That was it. That sounds extremely like Second Life lol. I would say that like 60-70% of PPL and Second Life are benign or friendly. Just absolutely stuck in 2006 in a very real way. Like, the culture of the Second Life spaces they visit has gone virtually unchanged since pre-2010. The kind of places and people where you hear a song from 2012 and go oh wow. Some modern music. The other 30-40% are like absolutely buck wild. I met someone at a like grimdark club bar, owned by a Harley Quinn and Joker roleplay duo who were surprisingly nice, whose profile was 100% serious that she was the ghost of famed pirate Mary Reed. In Second Life, I think she was spooning with a succubus. Like she wasn't rude or anything but just an absolute cryptid. But within that 30-40% there are like an itch of even stranger people. I'm talking people who spend real money to buy role-playing huts that require you to spend even more real money to buy virtual food to eat for sustenance, and that food has a real-life expiry date at which point the food disappears as inedible. A friend who deep dove into learning about this stuff found out that apparently farming virtual worms to grow crops for this particular HUD is a decent way to make money. The drama among these people whose Second Life basically is their first life is absolutely insane. We loaded into a virtual Walmart parking lot to find people having a whole screaming fight about if someone was sleeping around a skank. In Second Life, I don't really have a conclusion to this, but I 100% believe it. There is a breed of Second Life player who gets way too invested, and before you know it they have Second Life children and run a virtual hoa. My friend's parents divorced because his mother wanted a horse. His father argued that they can't keep a horse in a 6th floor apartment and don't have enough resources or money to rent a stable. Then she ducked her son's math teacher and became a crackhead. I feel sorry for everyone involved. Not a divorce or a lawyer, but my ex years ago left me because I wanted chickens in the front yard. The conversation was something along the lines of how our futures just didn't line up. Turns out he was cheating. But you know, blame it on the damn free range hens. It became a cherished phrase almost immediately. A couple in Australia threatened to divorce if gay marriage became legal. But surprise surprise, when it eventually became legal they didn't go through with it. They clearly had no idea what they were talking about too. They wanted to simply end their legal marriage. But to get divorce in Australia you have to separate for 6 months. Live at different addresses, etc. Because of wife's last name. After 10 years of happy marriage she decided that she doesn't like her last name anymore. She took her husband's last name after wedding. Our legal system does not allow people to change their last name if there are kids involved. So she filed for divorce. The wife got tired of being married to a transplant surgeon and wanted to be an instant hooker. And yes, it turns out she had mental problems. Surgeon and residency here, neuro. But still, surgeon lifestyle is really prone to divorce. You either marry somebody who's really invested in your career or you out of luck. Dealing with somebody so absent is not easy. If the reason told was stupid, most likely happened to be the straw that broke the camel's back and there were more serious underlying issues. An elderly friend of mine divorced his wife so she would qualify for Medicaid and could afford her treatment for a terminal illness. They'd been married 40 years and he had strong religious values about the sanctity of marriage. A state caseworker even visited the house to make sure he wasn't living there in her last difficult days. Our stupid greedy medical system was forcing them apart. He died broken-hearted and penniless not long after she passed. Every dime he had worked his lifetime to save either went to her medical bills or the unnecessary expense of keeping 2 households to get health insurance. Some people in the US choose never to get married for similar reasons. they'd lose their health insurance or their disability payments would be reduced. Well, she had a dream she was going to hell, so she blamed that on him. She now teaches Catholicism just in case. A much older woman, who had been married for a very long time, told me that one morning over breakfast, out of the blue, she had a burning desire to pick up her butter knife and stab her husband to death. She took that as a sign that maybe their relationship was toxic. Now, but my dad stated in court that he was divorcing my mom because she was always asking him to take out the trash or mow the lawn or calling him at work to ask him to pick up milk, you know. Adult stuff like maintaining a home and family. A lawyer turned to her and just said, "You're dodging a bullet here. Someday you'll be glad he left." Turned out he was cheating on her. My mom made a very good life for herself. At 71 years old she can afford a house cleaning service and pay someone to maintain her lawn. Calm as a rick. Weird Al Yankovic got divorced when his wife joined the Columbia Record Club. He couldn't handle that kind of commitment. In Italy apparently you can save on taxes when buying first house for your own living. If you married it counts as one for the couple. Some people are getting divorced when buying another house to save on taxes again. Not a divorce attorney or anything, but when I was kid, a 15-year-old girl wanted to get married to a 20-year-old guy. Because of her age she needed her parents. So she begged and pleaded with her parents, who eventually allowed it for when she turned 16. But the guy divorced her after 4 years because she refused to have sex or even kiss. Like it never occurred to her sex was involved. I suppose this is more of a reflection of the sex education she received. So back in the pre-iPhone era, there was a newly married couple in my apartment building. Maybe 3-4 months in, I come home and hear them fighting about what the exact time is. Like one was saying it's 8:15 and the other was like no it's 8:13. So the next day the guy just walked out and I never saw him again. Later I found out they got divorced over some silly fight. Not a divorce attorney, but there was a case in Kuwait where a woman wanted to divorce her husband because he eats hummus with a fork. The husband wants to vaccinate the child while the mother is against it. That isn't stupid or petty. Well, the mom is stupid, but it's definitely not petty. Not a lawyer, but my dad's friend got divorced because they couldn't agree on what kind of house to buy. He wanted one with an apartment so they can have extra income, and she didn't want some stranger living in her house. So they split up over it. My grandmother was stepping down into their fishing boat. My grandfather was already in the boat. He was holding the pier to stabilize the boat. A rogue wave came, pushed the boat violently away from the pier, and Grandma nearly fell into the water. She accused him of intentionally trying to embarrass her. They barely spoke for 3 months. My grandfather refused to divorce because we're Catholic but offered to live apart. I was about 10 years old, living with them during this time. Talk about a crash course in small talk. She didn't want to pay for part of the health insurance bill. A guy I used to work with said his wife divorced him because she claimed God spoke to her and told her he wanted her to move the French Riviera to be wined and dined by wealthy men. Because apparently God encourages casual hookups and wealthy men in the Riviera are lining up to sleep with 40-something mothers of 4. My divorce. I left him because he was boring. And this is one of the many reasons I probably should never marry. Unless I can find someone as boring as me. Husband was running a perfectly legal weapon store, EU country, where of course everyone with a legal license to possess a weapon could buy one. For example, hunters, police etc. Dart. After a state inventory audit, some of his stock wasn't registered appropriately. So he was charged with some misdemeanor of illegal possession of weapons etc. Now his wife freaked the F out and asked for a divorce. Poor guy tried to convince her that it was only a logistics error and that he isn't a crime overlord etc. But she wouldn't hear. Funniest part of the story was when at the divorce court, she accused him of wearing a necklace with an actual bullet, which of course was a decommissioned and harmless bullet. The guy responded, following my instructions. I have to market my business somehow, and everyone, including the judge, laughed. Of course all charges were eventually dropped. They divorced, let's say favorably for both parties. But I still say that he dodged a bullet. This lady didn't trust her hubby at all. Cher lasted just a bit over a week with Greg Allman before she filed for divorce. Eventually reconciled, but in the end they divorced. She filed because of his drug addiction. Something she should have had insight about if she had taken the time to actually get to know who he was before making the decision to marry. Instead she married him after just over 3 days of being divorced to Sonny Bono. Imagine that. I was cohabitating with and engaged to a guy, and we broke up after a week-long beach house vacation with my family. Because I beat him in front of everyone else playing Scrabble. He was a doctor with a huge ego. And said that I was supposed to let him win to make him look good. After a week of the silent treatment, when we got home, he moved out. That's okay. He was a gambling addict as well, and that was bothering me. So I was sort of pushing his buttons. I think. He wasn't as angry when I confronted him about his gambling problem. So it's funny to me that the last straw was Scrabble. Not an attorney. But my aunt divorced her husband because he snored. That's what she told us. Anyway. They had been together for 15 years, so I'm not sure why it took so long to figure out it was a deal breaker. It could have started later in life. And the real reason for the divorce was that he refused to do anything about it. That's a fairly common story. A man or woman starts snoring suddenly and refuses to see it as a problem. The other spouse is chronically sleep deprived and begs the snoring spouse to see a doctor or try nose strips or sleep in separate rooms. But the snorer won't do anything. There's not really a good answer to your question. I've had tons of clients who got divorced over all sorts of ducked up and really good reasons. I haven't had one where the reason given was just absolutely petty and pointless. It's an expensive, very public, and drawn out process. Almost no one gets divorced on a whim. Not a lawyer, but my own personal experience. I was married for 11 years and my ex-husband wanted the divorce. He said, "I don't want to lower my standards for you." He didn't want to do anything legal, so I would be forced to stay at home and continue to do things normally. He just wanted to see other women and still have a stay-at-home mom. I had to file for divorce and he fought everything because he didn't want to pay up. He wanted the divorce. And even though I was filing for it, he didn't want to give up what he was ordered to give. He wanted me to agree that I didn't have any rights to the assets and money because I was a simom for 6 years. It's been about a year and a half. Now I am in school full-time. Work 2 jobs. I'm a single mom. Yet somehow life is easier without him here. He gave me a blessing I didn't even know I wanted. I know a couple that wanted a divorce after 35 years because one of them were not happy with who their son was dating. People, man. Proof that even time can't heal stupidity. My ex-wife. I was repairing a pipe in the bathroom sink. I tell her, "Please give me a glass. I need to drink water from the sink tap." She screams, "Are you crazy? Go to the kitchen fountain. The water in the bathroom fountain, you never have to drink it." She believed that all over the world we had 2 types of water and double pipes that carry 2 types of water in each house. One for the kitchen and one for the bathroom. I'm not a divorce attorney, but I once worked with this dude that was like 19 years old. Seemed a bit young to be married. Then he said she was his second wife. He said he divorced his first wife because she kept grinding the gears in his car. Stupid that it had to happen, but technically a good reason. My mom, who worked for our state's welfare agency for 35 years, convinced her brother and sister-in-law to get divorced. They were both my mom's best friends. My mom and her bro were Irish twins, and my aunt and uncle were in love until the day my uncle died. But my uncle worked in construction and had no savings, and so when he got sick, he and my unemployed aunt had no income. This was my aunt's second marriage and her first husband, a teacher. Never remarried and eventually passed away. In my state, Even if you divorce your spouse, you can take their social security when they die if 1. You have none and 2. There are no other legitimate claims. She was a stay-at-home parent and never earned income, so she had no social security, and my uncle put almost nothing into the fund, so his monthly checks were pitiful. So they divorced. She petitioned for her first husband's SS. Got it. And then they got remarried. To this day, even though my uncle is now deceased, we are forbidden from mentioning to her kids that her and my uncle were divorced for a few months. How about the most stupid reason not to divorce? A good buddy of mine married a woman who almost immediately after the wedding developed back problems. Back problems that required her to quit her job as a florist. For the last, no kidding, almost 28 years. He's lived alone in a studio apartment so she can live in a 4-bedroom house. The reason he refuses to divorce her is because of her medical condition, and his job, cop, gives her golden level coverage. He also mumbles stuff about their 2 kids, but they are college bound now. He also forced himself to do the last 10 years. He's retiring from his department this spring at 30 years, because at 30 years, his contract gives him and his spouse 100% medical coverage for life. He hates his life. I hate it, and her, for him. Bonus, her boyfriend, who makes some nice bucks, lives with her in the house my buddy is paying for. The couple had a 7-year-old child, and the mom was some crazy anti-vax crazy vegan. The dad gave the child a 6-piece McDonald's chicken nugget for his birthday, and the mom went insane. She wanted full custody over the kid but didn't get it, thankfully. Not a lawyer. And indirectly the cause. My friend and I were competitive and always tried to mess with each other while competing. One time, while we were drinking, I don't remember what we were doing, but I said to him, "I ducked your sister." His sister's husband heard me say that and confronted her about it. This led to a huge argument and eventually their divorce. The guy was an asshole and she is significantly happier now without him. Not a lawyer. But my uncle once got her marriage annulled because she got mad at him for getting a sunburn on the honeymoon. Dude's probably 98% Irish with the pastiest skin you've ever seen, and she expected him to not get a sunburn? Not a lawyer here. But the stories I've seen of people being forced to consider divorce to afford medical bills even though they still love each other are pretty damn stupid in a very different way than you were thinking when you wrote this question, I think. Not an attorney. And not a reason. But still a stupid thing involving a divorce. When I was volunteering at an animal shelter, there was one dog who was there simply because his owners got divorced and couldn't agree on who should get the dog. So they abandoned him in the, thankfully no hill, shelter instead. Poor dog was so big, he barely fit in the small kennel. His bedding was just blankets on the floor because he was too big for the usual dog cot's beds. If he stood with his back to the wall, his front almost reached the kennel's gate. I don't know whatever happened to him, but I hope he found a forever home with nice humans and a lot of space. Had a client instruct me to write a warning letter once because his wife had taken a slice of bread out of his loaf. I didn't. What a waste of public funds that would have been. This was back in the days of legal aid. Although my brother had stupid reasons, my mom almost going to the police takes the cake, so long story as short as I can make it goes. My bro started cheating with a 20-year-old that worked for him. He was about 40 at the time. She may have been as young as 17-18. Sister-in-law catches him not once but twice. They separate and he moves out. My brother's reasoning for straying was because she was mean to him and yelled at him twice. The first instance was like 10 years ago and the second was after he was already cheating, so the best part of the story, he needed someone to watch the kids on his days and he had to work. My sister-in-law had to approve the person. He asked my narcissistic mother, who is one of those that will not change her routine or life for anything, set in het ways. She not only refused but she threatened to go to the police and say sister-in-law was blackmailing her to watch the kids. Not because they were going to keep her from the kids, no, because they wanted her to watch them and get paid. Of all the dumb things, my mom thinks this definitely up there. I wish we would have pushed her to go to the police just to see and hear their reaction to her blackmail claim.